Welcome back, wannabes and creators, to another episode of The Business of Art, the podcast that attempts to demystify business for artists. And we got a good one today, folks. We have Margot Atwell, who is the publishing director at Kickstarter. That's right. She is one of the grand poobahs of the publishing and comics division of one of the things that keeps my livelihood and some of your livelihoods going. And I am so thrilled to have been able to talk with her because not only is she a fantastic person who works at a fantastic company, but she also runs a fantastic publishing company called Gut Punch Press and is an author in her own right, having written Derby Life, Stories, Advice, and Wisdom from the Roller Derby World, and The Insider's Guide to Book Publishing Success, which is one of the formative books when I decided to launch a publishing company. And I'm so excited, so excited to have her with us today. Before we get into it, I want to remind you all that I have a Kickstarter resource for you. I have compiled everything I've ever said about Kickstarter on my blogs and podcasts into one resource, and that is thebusinessofart.us/Kickstarter Toolkit. Not only can you find all of my blog posts and podcasts, but also a link to buy my course, Crush It on Kickstarter, for just $7. If you're listening to this episode, I promise you're going to want to go back and listen to all the other Kickstarter episodes, read the blogs, as well as go to all of the resources that Margot mentions. Now that that's out of the way, let's get on with the show. Take it away, Margot. Tell us what you're passionate about these days.
Thanks for having me on, Russell. I'm really excited about independent publishing, and more specifically, like small, scrappy independent publishers that are really doing things differently. I'm really fortunate in that I get to work with a lot of them at Kickstarter, but I think that scrappy independent publishers are doing so many interesting things. They're taking risks, they're learning how to use new technologies and integrating that into their process. They're finding authors in new places or helping to showcase new voices that we're not necessarily hearing as much from. So I really think that some of the most interesting work in both book publishing and comics publishing being done by these small, scrappy, either startup publishers or nimble independent publishers that have been around for a long time.
Yeah, and that goes back not just to when you were at Kickstarter, but even before that, because you have a book. You wrote the book on the topic of independent publishing, right?
I did. I co-wrote it with my old boss at my old company.
Can you talk a little bit about that book before we get into the hard-hitting Kickstarter facts?
Sure. So it's called The Insider's Guide to Book Publishing Success, which was the most search engine optimized title we could imagine. It was originally a document that we created. My old publishing company was owned by the owner of a distribution company, so I sort of wore two hats as publisher of Beaufort Books, and I also worked with Midpoint Trade Books clients as well. So we had this ongoing document of things publishers needed to know in order to succeed, and it kept getting longer and longer. My boss had written sort of a quick and dirty version of that book a while before, but we decided to redo it and make it more oriented towards a trade audience or potentially self-publishers. So it's really meant as a simple primer on how book publishing works. And if I ever redid it, I think I would focus much more on self-publishing, but that's why it talks more towards publishers and a distribution role. But even as I was publishing it, things were changing every single day. So the second I put it out, there was already stuff that wasn't cutting edge anymore.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the hardest part with nonfiction is things go so fast that you just hope you can have some precious things that are universal in that tome of things that change constantly.
Absolutely. And it was a really valuable lesson to me, working on that book and then seeing what went out of date almost instantly. So when I went to write my roller derby book, which is called Derby Life, a crash course in the incredible sport of roller derby, because I enjoy puns. When I went to write that, I really tried to think about the balance between what would be specific enough to be useful versus general enough not to be out of date instantly.
Absolutely, and I love that. And actually, before we met, I had read the Insider's Guide book, and then
funny.
yeah, and then when how we met was the old person, my old liaison at Kickstarter, kind of left the company, and then you had emailed me, and the minute that you emailed me, I was like, I don't understand. Like, I remember her from something. Where do I know that name? And then I looked it up, and I was like, oh, of course, because when I started my own independent publishing company, like, I read that book. And then I went back and read it again after we talked, so that I could bone up on all the things that I had probably forgotten in the previous 3 years.
Well, I hope there were some interesting or useful pieces of information in there for you.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, a lot of it, has evolved since then. Especially, I mean, even Kickstarter in the last 3 years has evolved how publishing works.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but there's definitely some gold in those. There's definitely a lot of gold, which are, there's a lot of things that don't change. I mean, for all the things that change over time, these bedrock principles of how to publish something successfully, how to build an audience, how to sell the book, those things don't change that much since the 1500s. A lot of those still bedrock principles are the same bedrock principles that you can use today, and then just augment it with social media instead of sending direct mail flyers. Yeah,
I think that's a really good point.
So I want to now talk about the Derby Life.
Okay.
Sorry, I said Derby Dash because you have one of the best Derby names of all time, I think.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about Derby Life and why this book was so important to you and why you brought it to Kickstarter?
Sure. So you mentioned my Derby name, which is M Dash, and it might be the thing I'm most proud of in my entire life. I was so delighted when I found that name wasn't taken, because it managed to sound like a woman's name, be a speed pun, and refer to my career as an editor, and I was just delighted. So I think probably about as many people in the world know me by M Dash as know me by Margot Atwell. So when I got into roller derby I discovered it in 2006, which was not too long after I got into the publishing industry. And, it seemed like a good way to stay in shape and make some friends. But I discovered that it was a really incredible, passionate community. And it was also a community that was growing online. And people were using the internet and social media as a way to spread information and skills and connection across not only the country, but the world. And so I was watching this sport grow from hundreds of leagues to thousands of leagues, and, thousands of skaters to maybe 150,000 skaters worldwide, and seeing this all happen online. And I got involved in a website called Derby News Network, which was the ESPN of roller derby. And after a year or so, I helped found a website called Derby Life, which sort of still exists, but I'm not really updating it. But for a long time, it was the go-to site for roller derby life and culture and articles and how-to. So I had written the Insider's Guide, and I never really planned to write a book about roller derby, but I did try to convince a friend of mine to write a book about roller derby, and she said, I'm just way too busy. And I had already sort of blocked out what the chapters would look like, and then I realized, oh, wow, I'm writing this book. I was just trying to make someone else do it because I'm more comfortable as an editor. And when I got to Kickstarter in early 2014, someone skipped up to me like my second week there and said, what's your project? And I said, what? Apparently, within Kickstarter, the employees are really encouraged to run projects, so we understand the process from the creator's point of view as well as the backer's point of view and the employee's point of view. And most of us are also super backers, so I don't know anyone at Kickstarter who's backed under a few dozen projects, and I am hovering around 250 now.
Yeah, I don't often find people who have backed more than me. So congratulations on that. You succeed.
Thanks. I have coworkers who've backed 10 times as many projects as I have, so I'm sort of middle of the pack here. So I was writing this book and I was going to publish it anyway as, a quick and dirty ebook. But I realized that running a Kickstarter project would be a really great test to see if there was, in fact, an audience for a print book. So I put together, what it would take to make a decent book and do an offset print run, and then said, I'll try it out. If there's interest, awesome, I'll make it. And if not, I'll just publish the economical version as an ebook and then call it a day. But I was really excited and gratified to see that 254 people pledged to my first project, and I raised about $9,200 with a goal of $7,000. So it was amazing and terrifying to go through the process of being a creator, and very humbling to be on the other side and actually have to put into play all the advice that I had given to other people.
Well, this is one thing that I find amazing is you worked at Kickstarter and you still didn't get a project we love on your Kickstarter campaign. And this is one of the things that I've always it's fascinating to me, because if I had one question that everybody asks to me is, how do I get a project we love, or back then it was called Staff pick. How does that happen? And I'm looking at your first campaign when you were actually working at Kickstarter, and you didn't get one, so it makes me feel a little bit better about all of the creators who didn't get one either.
I think it was a staff pick. There are a few different levels, but I'm not sure how the historical.
Well, it doesn't show up on this on the thing, so it's possible it just didn't show up historically.
Well, I definitely wasn't, homepage or project of the day or the Projects We Love newsletter. I didn't get any of that kind of special treatment. It really is a very democratic platform. I think a lot of times creators think that by tracking down employees on Twitter and tweeting at them or sending them LinkedIn messages, that will get their projects chosen. I want to permanently debunk this. It's not true. That is not likely to get you staff pick or Projects We Love status any more than just putting up a really great project. We also sometimes get people sending us things and hanging out outside our office. Again, not likely to get you Projects We Love status.
So I'm not gonna. I want to dive into this a little bit, but I want to dive into it in a little bit different way than you've probably delved into it before, I hope, which is, could you talk a little bit about the process that you guys go through to decide a staff pick? Is it a morning meeting, or how do you go about deciding that, and what sort of stuff do you look for when you say, this is really interesting?
There are a lot of different factors that will get something chosen as a project we love. And it's not a firm set of criteria. So something, you might have a project that doesn't fit within most of what we normally look for, but is just a really wonderful, well done project, or has a really amazing approach to something that we've never seen before, and that will get it elevated to project we love. But a few of the things that we look for are, one, what are you making? Is it interesting? Is it different? Is it a new take on something that we haven't seen before? Are you a creator whose work is underrepresented in your industry, or are you elevating the voices of people who are not as often heard from? Because we really want our platform to represent a huge, broad range of all different sorts of creativity. And we'll choose one of varying sizes. It can be a $500 project, it can be a $20,000 project, or a $100,000 project. So the size really doesn't impact that at all. We look for a well-communicated message, including a great title and subtitle. We look for great project imagery, especially the main project image. I mean, that's kind of the book cover for your project. So ones that are high resolution, that actually fit into the specs that we've provided. That's really important. Our curation team really doesn't like banners and watermarks and things like that because they tend to sort of junk up the project image. One thing that we used to hate was when we would staff pick a project and then people would immediately slap a staff pick badge on it. We're like, no, that's the opposite of what we want. Because they would take a beautiful image and then, cover it up with a weird green badge that they found on the internet. So we've tried to make it more clear with our own badging. And I think that that's helped a lot. So we're also looking for, is your project well thought out? Are you obviously speaking to a community, and are they supporting your project and getting excited about it? Do you have nice images and, a lot of information well portrayed in your story section? We love GIFs. If you've got cool GIFs of some element of your project, that's really neat. I mean, basically, is it an enjoyable experience to land on your project page? And if you can say yes, honestly, then there's a very strong possibility that you'll be chosen as a project we love.
Out of all of the projects, I assume you go through hundreds of projects a day through your curation team. Do they give you the best, or do you go through, as everybody go through every one that's coming out and then make their selections?
Well, it's not a limited number. So if we had, 50% of the projects on the site were just absolutely phenomenal, they would all be projects we love. The curation team, I believe that they're broken down sort of by subject area. And so certain ones focus on certain areas. There's one guy who focuses on our design and technology projects. And anyone in the company can flag a project and say, hey, I think this is really cool, and pass it along to our curation team by Slack.
Right,
but again,
don't
curation... send LinkedIn messages to our whole company. It will not get you anywhere.
All right, I mean, so for all the people that I know or have talked to at Kickstarter, around Kickstarter, basically, if it's a good project, you're going to see it at some point during the life cycle of the project going on. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have different people checking the site daily or at least weekly. So we're seeing every single project that launches. One thing that you can do to make your project more visible, and I've heard this touted as a statistic that's a hard and fast, if you get 30% of your project, it will succeed, or it will be a staff pick or something like that. That's not true. There's no hard and fast stat around a project will definitely succeed if you get this far, or a project will definitely be a staff pick if you reach this amount in a certain time period. But creating momentum is a really great thing for a Kickstarter project. So when I plan a project, or when I'm talking to someone who's planning a project, I really encourage them to put together email lists, and sort of follow the ripples in a pond approach. So you get your most passionate supporters and friends and families and members and people who like your work, and draft an email to them with the project link and explain what you're doing and what you need from them. Send that out the moment your project goes live. And I've drafted a few further out ripples as well. So, the hour your project goes live, you send out that first email, and then you'll have a second one that's people who like your work, who are, friends or old coworkers or people who are in your industry, and, send that one out after you've already got a base of support from your most passionate inner circle. Because it's really great to land on a project that already has momentum. I think sometimes people will launch a project and then not really activate their networks for a few days. And that means that anyone who lands on their project in those first few days sees a project that, maybe it has 3 backers or 6 backers. But if you already know these people are going to be excited about your work, let them know instantly, or even let them know a day or two in advance that it's coming, so that, if you hit 10 or 15% of your project goal on your first day, then it looks like it's a much stronger project, and it looks like people are much more excited about it.
Yeah, I've landed on projects 2 weeks after the project began with 0 or 1 backer, and my first thought is always, man, they couldn't even get their parents and their sister to back.
Yeah, and sometimes things happen, and you had all the best laid plans, and it just doesn't work out. And so that's why I really recommend that people have plan A, B, C, D, E, go down the alphabet, and have a lot of plans around different ways to get the word out about your project. And the other thing about it is dominoes. So you push the first domino and others dominoes start falling, but sometimes your dominoes were set up wrong, or just gravity happens and they stop. So then you need a plan to push the next set of dominoes over. And running a Kickstarter project should be 30 or 35 days of consistently trying to figure out how to get the word out, who might be excited about your project, who hasn't heard about it yet, and follow up with people who have heard about it but might be on the fence or might have been distracted.
All right. What I love about Kickstarter is when I show creatives how to build their own business, I use Kickstarter as an example, and what it feels like to me is Kickstarter is business 101 for people who never wanted to learn business. It's everything you need. It's everything you need to know to basically succeed in business and online. Because launching this Kickstarter is not much different than launching another book, at least for me. Can you speak a little bit to that? Like, it feels a lot similar, finding the email list, doing launch events, going to the market, making sure people are excited to go buy your book when it comes out. All of those things, they don't seem very different, whether it's Kickstarter or you're publishing something outside of Kickstarter.
Yeah, that's a great point. Running a Kickstarter project is absolutely similar to launching a book or a podcast or anything else. One thing that I really like about Kickstarter for publishing projects is, one, it already fits into that process. So people who have run publishing companies or done other book projects are already familiar with the process. But two, because of the all or nothing mechanic, once you start getting the word out and you have a group of people who are interested in seeing your project succeed and get back to you, they really push you forward and share the project on your behalf, because they're committed and they want to get their reward and they want to see the project happen. So that all or nothing mechanism can really push a lot of intense interest in your project and can get people to activate their networks on your behalf who might otherwise have bought your book, but they probably wouldn't have tweeted about it. And that has been really exciting to me as an author and a publisher, because getting that network effect is something that publishers are always trying to do, but I haven't heard a ton of great ways, great approaches for that. So I'm always looking for that too, but I found that Kickstarter can be a really fascinating and effective and cheap way to do it.
Right. And to me, it feels almost like a convention experience where you can get extra things, you get stretch goals, you can make the book better. I know my friend Dirk Manning's doing Kickstarter right now, and he's doing a thing where he's doing leather bound, but only if you back during the Kickstarter. So there are all these things you can do to make it, an experience that is contained to Kickstarter, and that community has a reason to rally around it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up stretch goals, because I think it can be either a really excellent way to make your project more awesome for everyone, or a horrible experience that ruins your life. And I can share a little bit about what I've seen on that front.
Please.
So I think that when you're planning stretch goals, you really have to do your research in advance. And that means before you even launch your project, you should have an idea for, are you planning to include stretch goals? If so, what will they be? And then cost them out before you even hit launch. Because I think a lot of people get caught up in the excitement of an overfunded project and they're like, oh, stretch goals are a thing. Let's do this. There's tons of money. And they get caught up in this excitement and offer things that they haven't really fully costed out, or maybe maybe there's an upfront investment amount that if they hit only a certain amount will wipe out all the additional money that they've raised.
Or if they are doing a book and then they put in T-shirts and other things, they could no longer qualify for certain kinds of shipping also.
Absolutely. And adding in a T-shirt means you have to make a T-shirt, which is time consuming, and there are startup costs and shipping costs, and you really have to make sure that whatever you're adding is worth it to you in not just money, but also time and stress. With my project, I had one stretch goal for my Derby Life book. It was to add images at the beginning of every chapter. So I did end up hitting it. I added $1,000 stretch goal, and I said, if I hit it, I will add images. And I was really pleased with that. I got to make the book better for everyone. It did add a ton of extra work, including 16 images worth of contracts and sending contributor copies to photographers and sourcing the images. I had thought that photographers might submit images to me, and that just wasn't true. I had a bunch of photographers say, I'd love to be included. Pick anything you want. But these are photographers who have thousands of photographs. So it probably added maybe 50 to 100 hours of work for me.
Wow.
And ultimately, I think my book was much stronger because of it, but it added work, it added cost, and it also added cost to printing and shipping. And especially once I moved from an offset print run to print on demand, those extra pages have added up.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you said that I love, and one of the things that I always tell people, is your stretch goals should, if you want to activate your base, your stretch goals should go about making the project better. Just like adding new pages, adding extra content in the back, adding new stories. Do you find that those are more compelling stretch goals than just adding a print or adding something else?
Absolutely. Because if you add something that will make the project or the reward better for everybody, then all your backers are compelled to share that with their networks and try to help you reach that goal. Whereas if you just add a print or a leather-bound edition, the number of people who are likely to benefit from that it's much smaller. I also really like digital stretch goals. So stretch goals that add cool rewards or behind the scenes things, or maybe a digital print, because that doesn't add cost to, it doesn't add fulfillment cost or time. Certainly you have to figure out a way to digitally fulfill, but you're not stuffing a postcard into 500 packages, which I've done, and it's
not the most fun thing in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth it sometimes, but it's not necessarily how you want to spend your Saturday afternoon.
Right.
So you
exactly.
really want to think about it before you make an elaborate set of extra stretch goals that add all sorts of physical items to your fulfillment.
Absolutely. Okay, so you did the first one when you were at the beginning of your Kickstarter career, and then you launched another one just about a month or so ago. So could you talk about what you learned or how Kickstarter has changed, or both, between your first and second campaign?
Yeah. We've introduced a bunch of new features that I adore. For one, we've allowed creators to be more specific about their shipping costs. Before, you could only have the US or not the US. Those were the only options. So I had to set my shipping costs for Canadian backers at, I think it was like $15, which is brutal because it doesn't cost $15 to send something to Canada. But I was scared that if the balance of Canadian backers to Australian backers was off, then I would end up going into a hole and losing money on the project. So since then, we've enabled the ability for creators to select different countries and create shipping costs based on other countries. And you had mentioned before we got on the phone that some people are concerned that now you have to add a shipping cost for every country, but that's actually not true. You can select which countries you want to call out and specifically have shipping costs for, but then you can also select, I believe it's all other countries, and then just set a flat rate for all those other countries. So for me, I called out the US, Canada, and then I think everyone else was in their own category, but I only needed to have 3 different shipping levels.
Awesome. And how is the platform besides that? How have backers changed, or how has the platform sort of evolved in other ways in those 2 years? And what? Let's start there.
Yeah. My favorite new feature that we've launched is custom referral tags. We launched Google Analytics right around when I was running my previous project, which was interesting. But we've now enabled custom referral tags so that when you launch a project, if you share a link on Facebook, if you share a link in your mailing list newsletter, you can actually create a custom link so that when people click that link and then back the project, you can see how many backers and how much money that link generated. So it's a really pretty fine-grained way to see what's working and what's not, and how much money is coming from different sources. And you can also use it to fine-tune even what message you're using. You know, if you share a message on Facebook and it's a cool image, you can have a specific link for that. Or if you share a link on Facebook and it's just a text post, you can see how much that's resonating with people. So you can really use it to figure out what's resonating with your audience and what's working for you.
And is that behind the what section is that in? As is in the creator area?
If you go to your creator dashboard, you should be able to just generate a custom referral tag, and you can put in a name. Like for example, I had Derby Life Backers was one of my custom referral tags, and I saw that about 12 backers from my previous project came over to my new project, which sounds kind of low, but when you consider that my first project was a nonfiction book and my new project is a coloring book, that's pretty good. And there was a fair amount of money generated from those backers. So that was really exciting to me to be able to see how many people were moving from one project to another.
Excellent.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to share one other thing that I'm excited about. We've got Kickstarter Live, which is a way for you to turn your project video into a live stream. So you can talk to your backers and anyone else who happens along from your project page. And there's an interface where people can ask you questions, people can chat. They can send you selfies, which is a little 3-second looping video so you can see who you're talking to. And people are using this in all sorts of different ways. They're talking about their projects. They're having a conversation with some of their artists or their writers. Sometimes artists are actually showing their artistic process live on the site. And so it's a really cool way to engage with your community in a way that's more immediate than just sending them a backer update.
Is there an interface where people can look at all of the Kickstarter lives going on now, or is it specific per project?
Yes, there is. Let me see. I think I can probably find a link for that. Yes, it's live.kickstarter.com/explore. And it's organized by day. So you can just scroll down and see what's live now, what's coming up tomorrow. So that's a really cool way for backers to kind of float through different projects and see what people are doing.
Are you seeing a lot of people using the Explore function to see what's live now?
Um, Honestly, it's a new enough feature that I haven't seen stats around that yet. But we're really hoping that they will, because Kickstarter is, our goal is not just to have people funding projects on Kickstarter. It's to help people bring new creative projects to life. And I think that this is just a step in that direction of helping to create a connection between creative people and the people who appreciate creativity.
Absolutely. I mean, I love the idea. I like my Facebook Live. I wish it didn't interrupt me when I was in the middle of something. So this seems like a great way of being able to see. I want to see what's going on live now. Oh, there
Yeah.
it is. And it's probably a little more refined than a lot of the things that are on Facebook Live too.
I haven't personally used Facebook Live, but we actually do integrate with Facebook Live. So if you want to do that, then you can also pull your Facebook followers into your Kickstarter Live.
Oh, wow, that's great. So it'll show up on Kickstarter Live and Facebook Live simultaneously?
I believe so. I think there's more information on that link that I shared, which is, I've already lost it. I think it's live.
live.kickstarter.com/explore.
Yeah, I think there's an about page there as well.
Awesome. I'm super excited for that. I've seen it on a lot of projects, but I haven't dove in yet. I'm excited when my next project launches because I do Facebook Live quite a bit.
Nice.
So
I think you can also use it if we haven't launched this already. Then I'm just sharing some behind the scenes things. You either can already or should soon be able to use it as updates as well.
awesome. Can you say that again? Got a little bit muffled. What was it?
Oh, sure. You either can already or should soon be able to use Kickstarter Live as a backer update as well as for a live project.
Oh, that's fantastic. So it'll be you can do it. So you can either do it live as an update or archive it as an update or some combination of both.
This has gotten a little beyond my
Right.
understanding of the
It's
future
all right.
now,
I'll
but
tell you
there
what.
should be
Let's
more
just go to
information.
Let's just go. I'll just send everyone to the live.kickstarter.com/explore, and then they can check out all of the cool stuff because that is a really cool feature. And as active as the Kickstarter community is, I'm sure there are many people that are going through at night, just like how they're clicking on and funding Kickstarters, looking through that Explore to see what the actual creators are doing.
Yeah, we hope that people will use it that way.
So let me ask you this question. There's a lot of people that have said over the past couple of years, and especially this year, that Kickstarter's not quite functioning as well for them to get new backers or to activate their old backers as it has in the past. Do you think that's just a function of there being so much better projects, of people having Kickstarter fatigue, of people running too many Kickstarters, or can you speak a little bit to that?
Sure. And I think it really depends on a variety of factors. So it's hard to make blanket statements about a creator without knowing more about their specific project and track record and what they're doing. Certainly when we first launched in 2009 to maybe 2013, there were fewer people using the site as both backers and creators, and a great project stood out a little more. We have a lot of great projects on the site now, which means that that there's an absolute embarrassment of riches for backers to find. But we've seen that our backer community is consistently growing. And I think we're above 12 million now. And our repeat backer community is consistently growing. And that's, I think, about 3.5 million to maybe 4 million. So that repeat backer number is fairly consistently around a third of our overall backer number. And the majority of the money is coming from that repeat backer community. So I think it's about 60% of the money comes from our repeat backers. So as new projects come to the site and people are bringing their creative communities to Kickstarter and introducing them to Kickstarter, we're seeing that a lot of those people stick around and back more projects. We've been working really hard to try to figure out how to surface projects to our repeat backer community and anyone who's visiting the site that they're going to be excited about. And so I think you've probably seen that we've been doing more around customization and working to build a recommendation engine so that if you've backed a few projects before, Kickstarter as a website is smarter and shows you projects you're more likely to get excited about. Because the last thing we want is to show the same project to every single person who lands on the site, regardless of whether they're a board gamer or a film aficionado or super, super into comics. Obviously, those three people are going to have very different interests. And so we should be showing them the best of what we have to offer from the types of projects we have that they're interested in.
Absolutely. I think that is so true. And thank you for sharing that part. I want to ask you a little bit about actually constructing your page.
Sure.
Because one thing that I saw that was very different from your first campaign and your second campaign was your video was like night and day. Your original video for your first campaign was very sort of by the numbers about the project. It was good, but this new one was very much. It was more encompassing of you and your passion than it was necessarily about what the book was about. Could you talk a little bit about, is that something that more creators should do? Is that something that you gleaned from other creators, or what was the impetus for that?
Well, I'm glad that you said that, because the video is a place where a lot of creators are very concerned, and I was very concerned as well. I think part of the difference between the first video and the second is that I'm a lot more comfortable speaking on camera than I used to be. I'm really not exaggerating to say that when I first got to Kickstarter, when you pointed a video camera at me, I forgot how to talk. There was actually a really awkward moment that I was being interviewed before a roller derby bout by a few students that were doing a piece for class. And I was staring into the camera and I just straight up forgot how to speak and sort of blithered and then trailed off and then was like, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I have to go get ready for the bout. And I think they killed that interview. I hope they killed that interview and interviewed someone who had a bit of a better on-camera presence. So I've learned a lot more about how to convey a message and how to sort of tamp down that anxiety and move past it. But I've also seen that you don't have to be flashy to have a fun video. And I was thinking about the best way to sort of showcase what I was doing. And I thought that showing off, I'm not sure if you got this, if you're not in the derby community, but I have a lot of roller derby Easter eggs in my video. So in one scene, there's a poster of roller derby. In another, I'm reading a book that was, I think it was a bestseller. It was a graphic novel for YA readers about roller derby called Roller Girl. And if you like graphic novels, you should totally check that out. There was another one that when I'm sitting at my desk, someone had given me an old school desk sign that said M dash, publisher, author, ass kicker. So that's in there. That was actually when I was on tour for my first book. Someone gave that to me as a birthday present. That's so awesome. I thought about, trying to have more of my personality in this video.
Yeah, I feel like that was accomplished, which I think that a lot of creators don't have the right combination of personality and like what the project's about. But like the beginning started something like, I wish I could be a roller derby every time that it showed you roller derby and cooking and roller derby like sitting on your bed, and like I thought that was like, oh, I totally understand like this person's love of roller derby.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to make a video around something that was a coloring book that I wasn't illustrating. So I was hoping that came through and that it would be funny and not stupid. And I was also completely delighted if it came off as campy. Like I enjoy camp a lot, and I think derby people do too. The thing I learned between my first video and my second is that iMovie is really pretty easy to use. My first video, I I had a friend edit it for me, and he did a good job, but I was not very ambitious around what could be done. My second video, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try it and see what happens. And I watched a 30-minute tutorial on YouTube about how to use iMovie. You know, it's really not that hard. It's like a lot of dragging and dropping, and I had no idea, but it's kind of changed my life. So I'm very excited to use it more because I just didn't know what could be accomplished until I saw that. The thing I do wish I had done better was better audio, especially in the scene where I'm at our roller derby practice space. There was a fan going on in the background, which I didn't realize until I went to edit it. And by then it was too late to reshoot. So a friend who was good at audio tried to help me remove the fan sign, but I sound a little bit like a robot because of it.
Yeah, but I mean, I forgave it. I mean, I don't know if everybody did, but like, I think that do you find that with when someone's making a video that like personality can make up for a lot of those detriments that you find? Because your video was full of personality. I've seen other ones that were very personality heavy,
Mm-hmm.
not the greatest technical quality, but I still wanted to back them anyway because I liked them.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And especially for a book or comic project, nobody expects you to be a video expert. And as long as you convey what you're doing and why you're excited about it and why you're the right person to make that thing, I think backers do not expect you to have, you know, like a huge Hollywood high budget production value on it. I think the competition is a little stiffer in the film category, where if you have a poor campaign video, that says a lot about what they can expect from your project. But in the publishing category, as long as you have a nice video that is easy to understand and not too long and conveys what you're doing, I think people are very forgiving.
Excellent. Okay, I have a couple of last, let's call it an M- questions for you.
Okay.
That came in. Hang on, let me. One of the ones that someone wanted to know was, what is the length that you think that someone should space out Kickstarters? Is it okay to do it monthly? Like, is it 6 months, a year? What do you think about that topic? Or
That's a great question. And again, it's very dependent on you and your situation. I've seen people succeed with Kickstarter projects every 2 to 4 months. It depends a lot around what are you making? What kind of team or support do you have in place? If you're an individual and you're funding a pretty sizable project every few months, unless that's your full-time job, you're probably going to have a hard time running those projects, making the book or comic or whatever you're making, fulfilling the projects, and not going nuts. So if you find that you want to do projects more often, bringing a team in to help you out with some or all of that is really helpful. But if you're an independent publishing company and you're doing 30 books a year and you want to do 6 projects a year, awesome. You just want to make sure that you're doing the work to build up an audience for each individual Kickstarter project and not just relying on the same people to fund every project. Because I think when you hear about Kickstarter fatigue, what I've seen happen is when someone is doing a lot of projects and they're just hitting the same channels and the projects are all very similar, or else they're all different but don't seek out those different audiences, that's when you start to see participation decline over time. But if you're a publisher and you do a science fiction project and then reach out to those channels, and then a feminist project, and reach out to Bust and Feministing and some other places like that, and then you do a comics project that's meant for young readers and do a good job of getting parents and librarians on board, then all of those projects are going to appeal to the audiences that you're reaching out to specifically, but also some segment of your current fan base, if those are the types of things that you do. So that's a good way to consistently grow who's interested in and supporting your press while ensuring that your projects are successful.
Excellent. Okay. How much book do you think should be done before you launch a Kickstarter?
As much as possible. My simple answer is it's great if you can have as much work as done as humanly possible up to the point where you need to start putting money into it. I think your project is much more likely to succeed if you're really far along than if it's still a concept. And especially, it's really helpful to have some good images. I think that that's one area where I would like to see publishers and authors do better, is having good imagery, both for their project image and in the story section. Because the internet is so visual these days. And Facebook and Instagram and Tumblr and even Twitter have taught us that, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so I'm not saying not to have any words, but you do want to make sure you have representative images. So that might even take a little bit of investment from you before you launch your project. But it's going to be much easier for you to get people excited about what you're doing if it's more done rather than less done. And it's also going to be a lot easier for you to finish and fulfill your project afterwards if it's fairly far along.
Right.
But that said, sometimes, if you need money for research and you've done as much work as you can beforehand, but you have 3 months of research and travel that you can't do without the project funding, then launch it before that.
Absolutely. And I just had another question, and it went straight out of my brain. I'm trying to go through all these ones to make sure that I get all the ones that people have asked me. Okay, so the last one that I have listed down here is: do you ever think, or have you guys ever had to crack down on projects who get funded in the last few hours with a massive amount of, like, a $5,000 back in the last hour when they were only like 10% funded before?
What do you mean by crackdown?
I don't do. I'm gonna say that what he means, because he asked this question to me, and that's all he has is. Try to see if he responded to that question. Do you has it become part of your terms to do that, to like look at those sorts of projects that fund almost their entire campaign at the end, or is that not part of your terms now? So like if they get like 5,000
recently, we do have an integrity team that's constantly looking at our system, our ecosystem, and all the projects, and looking for suspicious behavior. So I think if we saw a project where all the pledges came from one IP or things like that, that would look very suspicious. But I've also seen projects that, maybe it's a $60,000 project and they raised the last $40,000 in the last 36 hours. Sometimes that's just about a campaign and a community really rallying to make something happen at the end. If I were to read between the lines on this, it might be that this is a question around self-funding a project.
Yeah, I think it's about whether someone is going to sell, is whether, like, somebody putting in the last $5,000 but using their sister's name just so that they can get the $2,000 that was in the project.
I believe we have terms against self-funding. I mean, certainly we don't have any problem with a person's sister backing their project to get a copy of their book. You'll have to check out the terms to see specifically what we say. But my gut on things like that, and what I would rather see with a project that I'm advising, is say you need $10,000 and you raise $3,000 from 100 backers. Rather than sort of sneaking around and getting family members to put $7,000 into your project, I'd much rather see you let the project fail or not succeed, then go back and figure out, okay, what needed to be better? What went well? Where did this project fall short of my expectations? What did I think would work that didn't? And what could I do better next time? And then relaunch it 6 months later after doing some hard work and legwork to get the project up to snuff. And that might be about doing a better job of reaching out and activating the community, getting more press. It might be about getting a better project image or conveying what you're doing more clearly or having better rewards. And you can actually ask your backer community, hey, like, what made you back this project and what did you think I could have done better? I'm hoping to relaunch this and I hope you'll think about sticking around and supporting it when I come back. And I really have seen projects that don't reach their goal the first time go on to succeed and sometimes exceed their goal the second time around. One of my favorite examples is the Coolest Cooler project. They originally had a goal of $100,000 and did not meet it. So they went away, they did more research, they found better suppliers, and were more thoughtful about how they launched the second time. And then they raised $10 million when they went back with a $50,000 goal. So not everyone's going to raise $10 million. In fact, I can almost guarantee you won't raise $10 million. But the lesson is there that relaunching a project after having done more work and fine-tuned it, I think is a much better thing than sort of gaming the system and making a project succeed that maybe isn't quite ready to succeed or where people haven't supported it the way you expected them to.
Yeah, you don't really learn. You're also taking yourself or hampering yourself because you don't learn anything from that failure if you actually get it to be a quote-unquote success. But by looking at something that has failed, you can really examine why the thing failed instead of just being thankful that you got the amount of money that you needed.
Absolutely.
Okay, so one more question before we end. I think one more question before we end, because I've kept you way longer than I said I was going to, is what resources do you recommend for people that you advise to go and check out before they launch a project?
I love this question. We have a really robust creator handbook and now a Medium channel dedicated to Kickstarter tips and lessons from our team here and our creator community. So I would definitely spend a lot of time on our Medium Kickstarter Tips Hub and the Kickstarter Creator Handbook. We also have a Creator Basics series on YouTube and a community called Campus where you can ask questions from the Kickstarter creator community and people will actually jump in and answer you. So those are 4 really great resources that you should look at when you're starting to plan your campaign. I would also suggest that you look at your category and also projects that you like in other categories and back, 5 or 10 projects, even just for $1, so that you get the experience of being a backer, getting updates, and seeing how creators run their projects, what you like and what you dislike, so that you can do a better job with your project.
Yeah, that's just market research.
Yeah.
And it's important whether you're running a Kickstarter or launching a book in any other way, but it also allows you to be part of the community. And, in my opinion, like for me, when I see a creator who has created more projects than they have backed projects, it makes me not want to back that creator.
Yeah, that's the same for me too, because it really is kind of a creative community and ecosystem. So you want to believe that people care about nurturing creativity and that they'll back other people's projects as well as just asking for backings from the community.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've done 3 projects this year and I've backed like over 80. So
Wow.
feel like my ratio is like okay in that. I don't feel that bad about launching 3 projects if I'm backing 80 because I feel like I'm giving a lot back to the community. And I hope To me, that's what Kickstarter's about. It's about the community of people all helping each other make cool things happen.
Absolutely. And we use community as a buzzword a lot. And I think even um, corporations use community and social media uses community. But what community means to me on Kickstarter is a really much more authentic thing. I had people back my original project who offered to connect me with copy editors with proofreaders when I forgot to hire the proofreader that I had planned to hire, and she was busy when it came time to proofread my project. And I had someone beta read my book and give me really good advice for what to do with some of my chapters. And actually, one of my backers was interviewed, and I included his quotes in my first roller derby book. So my backer community really is a community of people that I've met face to face, who've come out to say hi and thank me and get their book signed at events. And I had a roller disco book launch party last year, and some of my backers came out and I met them in person for the first time there. So I really think that thinking about Kickstarter not just as a way to get money or a cheap marketing tool, but as a way to connect deeply with people who care about the types of work you're making, it makes it a much more exciting and less scary experience.
Absolutely. And that is a wonderful place to end. Is there anything that you want to tell the community that we haven't discussed yet?
Oh boy, I think you prepared me for this, and then I did a poor job of thinking about it.
That's right. You can stall by giving us where we can find you online, and that usually buys you a couple of seconds. If you and maybe even a minute.
Okay. Well, you can definitely find me online on Twitter. I'm Margot Atwell, MargotAtwell. I've got that sneaky silent T in there. I'm also at Gut Punch Press on Twitter and Instagram, and gutpunchpress.com is where you can find everything I publish. Let's see. Advice for creatives. I think sometimes people think about marketing and they think about it as a dirty word, like trying to get people to do something for you or get people to give you money. But when you think about sharing your Kickstarter project or whatever you're making on or off Kickstarter, if you think about it as a way to share cool things with people who are as interested in your passions as you are, then it becomes a lot less scary and a lot less cynical. Because sometimes I've been really bummed to find out that a Kickstarter project ended, maybe for a literary board game, for example, and I didn't even know it was happening, and I've missed out on an opportunity to get something cool. And I would have loved to find out about that on Twitter or on Facebook or, getting an email from a friend. So you really can help people out by sharing your interest with them. And as long as it's done in a way that's about sharing a passion and not, begging them for money, I think it can be a really great experience. But I think a lot of creative people are scared to put themselves out there in that way, and they're scared to impose upon people. But obviously you've chosen to make this thing because you're excited about it. And so sharing that excitement can be a really great way to get the word out about what you're doing.
Oh man, I love that. And thank you so much for coming on, Margot. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And one more thing. You were talking about giving back to the Kickstarter community by backing 80 projects, but you can get back to the Kickstarter community by sharing a cool project with a group of people you're in touch with on social media or a web forum or an email list. You can give back to the Kickstarter community by doing a podcast or sharing your own story. So there are a lot of ways you can, as a creator or a backer, give back to the community that doesn't involve money at all.
So that was Margot Atwell, publishing director at Kickstarter, publisher of Gut Punch Press, and a writer in her own right. as well. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, please head on over to thebusinessofart.us/iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to us today. It's the best way to make sure you don't miss any of the awesome content that we have here or anything we have coming up in the future. Thanks a lot, wannabes and creators. I will see you next time.